Hey guys, I want to welcome you to the weekly Wednesday for the Financial Freedom newsletter, where every week, every Wednesday, we delve into something inspirational, motivational, something excerpt taken from the Financial Freedom weekly newsletter. Wherever you are, if you're listening on Spotify, on iTunes, Google, be sure to click the like, subscribe, share, comment. And without ado, let's get into the show. Hey guys, welcome to this week's podcast episode for the Financial Freedom Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Christopher Liu. And as you know, I've always been on a quest to get the secret sauce, what makes people wildly successful and why do some people struggle. So in that realm, I boiled it down to 4 different types of freedom that we all have to work on: financial, time, location, and emotional and mental freedom. And once I was able to create that secret sauce, I sought out mentors, people that were embodying the lifestyle and wanted their insights, and created this podcast to share it with the world. So today I have a very interesting and very experienced guest. His name is Brady Frank, and he comes from the world of dentistry, but he's an entrepreneur, inventor, author, and thought leader, and he has a passion for teaching. You can just tell by talking to him, and he's going to be talking about creating a business, selling a business, and he's got a lot of gems for the physician community. So Brady, welcome.
Hey, Chris, thanks for having me on here. I'm excited to get going. And Chris, when you talk about the 4 different buckets of freedom, I talk about it similar. I talk about total healthcare freedom, financial freedom, clinical freedom, lifestyle freedom, which I think embodies pretty well the 4 types of freedom that you talk about.
Yeah, it's amazing to just connect. There's so many definitions of freedom now. This is not just one, and it's always great to hear people's perspective. So tell the audience out there your origin story and what you do.
So my dad has a master's in healthcare administration, an MHA, and he would go from hospital to hospital around the eastern U.S., ones that had negative EBITDA or cash flow. He worked with one of his best friends in college in a consulting company, did corporate compliance for physicians. And he said, Brady, I wouldn't go into medicine. I would go into dentistry. So I always had a healthcare background, ended up going into dentistry, but went more into the business side of dentistry. I'm a 3rd-generation dentist, but with my dad being in healthcare. And so, believe it or not, early on in my career, I consulted and worked with bariatric surgery groups, orthopedic surgery groups, podiatry, chiropractic, all sorts of healthcare. But I also made my first real estate investment in 2001, and I've been investing in real estate ever since, conglomerating healthcare buildings, selling them to REITs for a much higher value. And so, Chris, I know you've done quite a bit of real estate investing. So I thought, with both of us being real estate investors, maybe we could talk about how doctors who own their own practice, who are watching this, can actually treat their practice and recapitalize it and gain wealth, similar to how you might gain wealth in real estate. How's that sound for a fun topic?
Yeah, I know, we had talked about it backstage. So, share your ideas, and then that'll open up a lot of questions, a lot of discussion and conversation.
Yeah, maybe what we could do is I could map some things out for folks. Maybe can you allow me to share my screen and I'll map a couple things out?
Yeah, sure. Let's see here.
Yeah.
There you go. Go ahead.
Yep. So I'll share it in a second after I get going. But basically, a lot of physicians who are still in practice, who haven't gained freedom like yourself or myself, and I did in my 30s. It sounded like you did in your 30s as well. Owned a bunch of practices, sold them, had real estate, sold that. But basically, we always look outside of our practices for passive income, for investments. And sometimes, if you can find a way to harness that asset that you have, if you're an independent physician or an independent dentist or podiatrist or chiropractor, you can take that asset and figure out how to at least get your initial capital that can then be used to invest in real estate or other asset classes. And so they talk about in real estate the highest and best use, right? And that's how to increase the value most rapidly. So the highest and best use for physician-owned practices is for physicians to bring their practices together under one entity, or what we call parent co or hold co. Immediately, that valuation of that business goes from here to about here, because private equity companies that are flooding billions and billions into healthcare right now, moving out of single-family homes because of interest rates, those billions they're spending in healthcare, they want groups of practices together rather than buying 10 of them separately. And so that's the most powerful thing occurring in healthcare right now, where a group of healthcare providers get together, put their practices together, and have a massive, what we call recap with private equity. And for physicians that know how to find that private equity, it's very easy. And the private equity firms are literally bidding and fighting over these healthcare groups, whether it be ophthalmology, orthopedic surgery like yourself, bariatric surgery, plastic surgery, med spas, physical therapy, so many of them right now. So maybe that'll get us started for folks that say, hey, I want to move into that passive income realm, but I do have a practice right here, and I want to have the best financial reward from that practice.
Yeah, it's interesting, which opens up a lot of questions because a lot of there's 5 trends that are kind of on the verge in healthcare. In addition to AI, there's the mid-levels practitioners coming in. There's private equity. A lot of physicians are concerned. They're like, oh, am I going to lose my job? I'm going to be beholden to another. Now we're commodities. So tell us, for physicians listening to this, what is your response?
Yeah. So if you think of that, the 2 greatest threats to a doctor license, AI, okay, and mid-level providers with very low education, oftentimes online education, I hate to say, right? So the best thing you can do to insulate yourself is to get into a niche. And inside of niches, you usually find a very strong fee-for-service component. So why does that protect you from AI and mid-level providers? Well, inside niches, let me go over an example of a physical, let's do a plastic surgery group and a bariatric surgery group that happen to add a niche of med spa to that. Med spa is the #1 growing private equity funded healthcare business today. Just 12 years ago, there were very few med spas. In comparison to today, that number has increased by many hundreds of percent. So that is an example of insulating yourself by taking your business, bariatric surgery, plastic surgery, even physical therapy independently, and adding a very high growth area of healthcare like med spa that fits all those criteria. Med spa patients fit these 5 criteria. Number 1, baby boomers hold 80% of the wealth in America. Baby boomer females are the ones that get med spa treatment. Number 2, med spa treatment is largely non-insurance based. It's fee for service, right? Therefore, you're not going to get touched by the insurance trend toward lower level providers, right? That can do it faster, easier, for less money because they have very little education. Number 3, why is med spa such a great fit under a lot of healthcare practices? Well, I'll tell you what. Aesthetics. America is becoming more and more about what you look like, your image, right? So it's going in a forward-moving wave with healthcare in America and people's view of themselves. Number 4, med spa requires very little overhead. Your different treatments to the face, whether it be laser or injection treatments, right? All that stuff. You can bolt that on to most healthcare practices for very little cost. And to be trained in med spa is actually lower than a mid-level provider, right? To do Botox injections requires very little education. And number 5, biggest one, whenever you get into, Robert Kiyosaki of Rich Dad Poor Dad says you make your money when you buy the asset, right? He says that, but he also says that you want to know your exit strategy before you enter an investment, right? So with med spa, we know, because it's the number one private equity backed component in healthcare today, that what's going to happen is you're going to have a very large exit by putting that as part of your business. In fact, when you add that to your healthcare business, you've now made your other business that much more profitable. It's using your patient base here to go. So that is the best way to insulate yourself from mid-tier providers and AI, right? AI can't do injections, right? Okay. And guess what? You become the person that hires mid-tier, right? The Botox folks, the laser folks, and so some of those, and that's just one example of a model for those who are physical therapists on here, that are on here. Working in the chiropractic realm is very compatible. For those that are in sports medicine, adding physical therapy to that is a great union. Dentistry with dental hygiene. Dental hygiene, they're becoming more independent. Well, the more the dentist builds up their hygiene department, the better off we are. Chiropractors who hire mid-level massage therapists. That massage therapy is a recurring revenue stream, whereas chiropractic, people come in, get their back cracked a couple times, they're good for a while. Massage therapy is that recurring revenue stream. Also, in all healthcare markets, the internal plan, the healthcare savings plans, dental savings plan, chiropractic savings plan, where that office has their own continuity program, those are huge to insulate ourselves from insurance mandates, mid-level providers, and of course the AI threat that some believe could be detrimental.
Yeah, interesting. That's an interesting model. So I know you had mentioned med spas and incorporating new products and services. I know you mentioned plastics, ortho, and a few others. There was a recent report, several years ago, talking about private equity targeting or buying more attractive physician group practices, and that was anesthesia, emergency medicine, family, and a couple of others. But this idea of incorporating the med spa and the aesthetics, and what other types of specialties would be amenable to what you're describing?
Yeah, let me give the most compatible ones that have the highest leverage for value. I was just working with someone in New York City that was a regular physician, a generalist, that bolted on emergency medicine, right? Urgent care to theirs. They just sold to Walmart for many, many billions of dollars, right? So you physicians out there that might have a generalist practice, adding an urgent care or emergency care component to that is incredible for a variety of reasons, but it's a great practice builder. But urgent care has a very large fee-for-service, non-PPO, it'll accept insurance assignment, but non-PPO component. So the hottest ones, and I'll just give you the hottest five. Okay. Bariatric surgery with med spa, plastic surgery with med spa, chiropractic with massage therapy, dental with dental hygiene and med spa, and there's a few others in dental. I'm actually a dentist, so I know a lot more about dentistry than some of these. Another big one is orthopedic surgery with a orthopedic-based urgent care. That's bone and joint, basically. So it's pretty much all mid-tier providers in these secondary locations that feed a main surgery center for orthopedics. So you might have one orthopedic surgery center and five urgent care, if you will, bone, a lot of cortisone shots, as you can imagine, right? A lot of that stuff where it's almost a revenue stream, very small lease space, right? It's cortisone shots. It's oftentimes coupled with a physical therapy department or right next to physical therapy. Great feeders for the orthopedic surgery practice, which then is a very attractive buy for private equity. And I'll give you one more, probably connected with surgery centers, where the anesthesiology group is actually contracted to do the anesthesiology in orthopedic surgery groups, dental surgery groups, oral surgery, Podiatry, and so anesthesiology groups that have a special niche are very, very, very high leverage in private equity today. So if anyone, I hate to leave anybody out, Christopher, but if you're in a certain healthcare niche and you're like, I wonder what Brady would say about mine. I've pretty much seen it all. Just email me at Brady, and I'd be happy to let you know what's working in your niche.
Yeah. It's I know we could have an entire webinar and a masterclass workshop. How do people contact you and follow you, reach out to you? These are really interesting ideas, and especially how do you position yourself for private equity buyout, and how do you get in as an investor, even if it's not your own practice. So, and how can they? You already mentioned your email, but how can they follow you on social media?
Yeah. Here's what I'd recommend. You'd mentioned how can folks invest in these different platforms, and so I've given you my email, but I'd like you to look at how I think conglomeration in an industry is best done. Some folks, even if you're not a dentist, I would go to see how my team does seminars in the dentist niche. Okay. And if there's any of you out there that feel like I want to be a presenter, I want to teach others, we will be doing similar things in other niches. So if you're saying, hey, why aren't you in orthopedic surgery? Well, it's probably because we don't have someone we'd love to work with yet. So take a look at what we're doing in dentistry. Become a DSO to dentistry is an MSO to medicine. All right, medical services organization, dental services organization, and all those are the non-clinical assets of medicine and dentistry. The private equity companies, that's what they invest into, the DSO or the MSO.
One last question, before which private equity firms are the biggest buyers? Is it BlackRock, Blackstone? Which of these firms are looking at it?
Yeah, that's a great question. So a little longer answer here, but I think you'll like it. So there's low, mid, and upper tier private equities. The low ones invest 50 to 100 million. The mid tier usually are 100 million to a billion. And then the large ones are 1 billion to 20 billion, right? These larger deals. The area that you want to be in is generally the middle tier. 80% of all the private equity companies are in that middle tier, 100 million to a billion. And so that's why when an industry conglomerates, they want to build a group of substantial size, but not too big, because it's BlackRock and KKR and just 4 or 5 others at the very top. They really don't compete. They're actually kind of buddies up there, right? And you're not going to get that bidding war, that auction style component in real estate, right? When you're selling something, you want a few buyers bidding it up, right? Same thing in healthcare. And that all occurs at the mid-level. So right now, there are 51 extremely active private equity companies in healthcare, and 80%, which means 40 of those are in the mid-tier space. And so anyway, there's a lot of them. Audax out of Boston as a mid-level. Trinity Hunt. I've got contacts with all of them. So if you do have a sizable healthcare business, that means your revenue's over 3 million. I'd be happy to take your email, just let you know what that would look like with private equity, or how large you'd have to grow your business to be able to get there.
Yeah. Very fascinating. And so let's thank for the audience. Let's thank Brady for coming onto the show, talking about the mechanic, introducing this really interesting concept. And be sure to follow him on social media, and all of his resources will be in the links and show notes.
Awesome, Chris. Great to be with you, and might have to get you on one of my shows in the future. I'd love to show some of the dental side, what y'all are doing in healthcare as physicians. And great to meet you, Chris.
Yeah, same here. I hope you really enjoyed that wonderful, inspirational, motivational piece. Again, wherever you are listening, if you liked it, be sure to like, comment, share, subscribe. We're on everywhere: Spotify, iTunes, Google, Amazon, Audible. And without much ado, be sure to thank this show's sponsors, and we'll see you next week.